The Outlanders Journey. Tier 1, Level 1. Chapter 2. Laurel. You've been cooped up in a carriage for weeks. There's no sunlight and barely enough fresh air. Without any room to stretch, the muscles in your legs feel like they've atrophied. Constantly, you're both freezing cold and sweating profusely through your clothes. The stacked crates and barrels around you rattle when the carriage runs over the bumps, and you're constantly worried they'll fall over and crush you. There's no leaving the carriage, not even for bathroom breaks. You're all expected to squat in the corner and shit into a metal basin, which Elithor fetches at the end of the day to dump out. You can't see anything outside, but you can hear foot traffic and galloping horses. Any conversation you manage to catch is some variation of cussing at a fucking idiot to watch where they're going. The language over time has shifted from Elvish to Dwarvish. The only saving graces have been Bach and Maeli, who keep you sane by regaling you with whimsical tales about the forest. Bach speaks endlessly about the bison his father herds and his mother's magic berries, and though he is self-conscious about his voice, he sometimes hums his favorite childhood lullabies. Maeli, meanwhile, likes to gesture wildly with her hands when she talks about the different trails hidden and scattered near her home, and she can't wait to show you two. Whoever tells a story gets to sit in front of you on the floor as you brush their hair, knotted, dirt-caked hair that you scrupulously disentangle, one section at a time. When you're done, they touch their head, stroking their own silken hair in disbelief. It's never been this soft before. They marvel each time, and with the very dagger that Bach wielded to stab you, you trim their hair down to a more manageable shoulder length. Twice a day, you prestidigitate them clean. Only after you lifted away all the dirt and stains from their faces did you see them for who they truly are. Bach, rather than having that almost animal-like visage, is both roguishly handsome and gentle-appearing, with light, purplish freckles peppering his face. Maeli, now comfortable around the two of you, has this mischievous expression at all times, and hidden beneath what was her horrible mop of hair are some of the longest pointed ears you've ever seen. Eventually, though, on a cool, rainless evening, you are awoken by the sound of your brother's voice and knocking. "We're here," he says as he opens the back of the carriage. A dim light peeks inside. You peel your head off the wall, wiping away the little trail of drool running down to your chin. You blink at Elithor, who reaches his hand out to you. Right now, he's presenting as a thick-bearded dwarven man, a bit too tall for his apparent race. Keeping your head low, you stumble to the exit, grabbing his hand as he helps you down. The first thing you smell is sawdust. The carriage seems to be parked in the corner of a giant warehouse. A crescent moon and speckles of starlight filter in through a window high above you. The walls of the interior are lit with torches, and shelves packed with various goods span for seemingly hundreds of rows. This is the freshest air you've smelled in days, despite the must. Surrounding you are several other parked carriages. "Y'all are safe here until morning," whispers Elithor. "But keep quiet. The other workers are sleeping upstairs." He takes Maeli's hand as she hops down effortlessly. "This is where you work now?" you ask. You notice a set of stairs on the other side of the warehouse leading to a balcony area. On the second and third floors are rows of identical doors and windows, like a guest house. The lights are all off, and the curtains are shut. "The owner put me in transportation so I can understand how deliveries are done. If I get through this year smoothly, he'll entrust me with a real storefront. We got lucky the border agents didn't pick this carriage for random inspection. Would have fucked us all over." All you can do is laugh awkwardly. He sighs, stretching his neck and shoulders. "After we get some sleep, I'll drop these two off, and then we go back to BC. I'll talk to the owner, see if he can get you a job, and next year I'll hire you to work for my shop. You can earn a little money while reapplying for school. Sound good?" You shrug, pursing your lips. "Sure." Bach crawls out of the carriage, bumping his head against the ceiling as he hops down. The carriage rocks and creaks, and the wheels nearly break under his weight. Maya-Lee is gazing all around her in wonder. "We're at the northernmost border of Harrington," says Elithor to the two of them. "We're less than a day away from the INA border. Keep going north if you start before dawn, and you'll get there by afternoon." Bach and Maya-Lee nod, sharing a smile with each other as they hold hands. Elithor hops back into the carriage and pulls out an especially large crate. Bach, seeing this, scuttles over and takes it out of his hands. Your brother nods at him. "All right, let's head upstairs," he says. He motions with a head tilt for all of you to follow. You're moving as quietly as you can, but your footsteps still echo all around you. The floor is rough, and your boots grind into a thin layer of dirt. In the open air, you can feel your sweaty clothes sticking to your skin. Elithor continuously turns around to shush all of you. You pass through several rows of shelves, and you note the labels marked in Dwarvish. Swords, armor, rations, potions, etc. You ascend the stairs you saw earlier, and Elithor fishes out a set of keys from his pockets. At the top of the steps, he unlocks the door to a narrow balcony. Along this hall are some of the tiniest doors you've ever seen, no more than 5 feet tall. At the other end, there seems to be some sort of fire escape. You peer over the railings to your left, and you're finally able to take in the full view of the massive warehouse. There are about 100 rows of shelves, and dozens of parked carriages lined against the walls. 3 sets of massive double doors are on the opposite end. Painted on the wall is the same hammer logo printed on Elithor's carriage and the crates inside. Elithor continues ahead and stops at the 5th door. He pushes it open, revealing his sleeping quarter. Inside is a cramped room with a tiny mattress, nightstand, and footlocker. He waves his hand in a circle and then closes it into a fist, and a small candle on the nightstand flickers to life. You duck down as you squeeze inside. You try to stand, but you bump your head on the ceiling. When Bach enters, he crawls on all fours. Elithor closes the door. With 4 people inside, the room is tightly packed. You plop yourself down on the dusty wooden floor. Bach sets the crate down, and as he is about to sit in the corner by the door, he flinches and goes still, staring ahead like a frightened deer. You follow his eyes and notice the dirty mirror across from him. He blinks at his own reflection in stunned disbelief, slowly reaching his hands up to his own face, rubbing his nose and chin. A dawning look of horror as his own visage gazes back at him, and you realize he's probably never seen himself since he was taken as a child. "So," says Elithor, dusting his hands, "I know it's cramped, but it'll have to be like this. Everything's small up here. Elise and Maya-Lee, you two take the bed. Bach and I can sleep on the floor." You're still looking at Bach, who finally turns his head away to listen to Elithor. "It's fine," you say. "I can sleep on the floor. You take the bed, Maya-Lee." Maya-Lee nods, smiling. She jumps on and falls back with her arms and legs splayed out, breathing a sigh of relief. Bach finally relaxes his shoulders as he observes her simple happiness. Elithor turns to Bach. "You and Maya-Lee ought to leave before dawn. As soon as I wake you all up, I send you on your way. Got it?" Bach blinks, then nods. "Things are going to move fast come morning, so let me give you your supplies now." Elithor reaches over and drags the crate towards him. He takes the lid off, and you peer inside. Backpacks, sleeping bags, sets of clothing, including winter gear, filled water skins, adventuring equipment, and a sword. "Bach, I tried to get the biggest clothes I could find. It might still be tight on you." Bach reaches in, taking out a long wool coat. You can already tell it's going to stretch, and he might barely be able to button it up. But this pure expression of astonishment creeps onto his face. "This is mine?" he says. You nod. Ain't gonna fit anyone else, says Elithor. Thank you, he says, almost too loudly. Each of y'all can take a backpack. I also got extra supplies and equipment, and each of you two will have 10 days of food and water. Bach pulls out a backpack. Maya Lee has gotten out of bed by this point, gazing over your shoulders at what must be a chest full of treasures to her. She reminds you of you when you were a child, kneeling by the fireplace as you'd await your spring-coming presents. She grabs her backpack and immediately pulls open the flap, digging through its contents. A brand new wand pouch slips out of her backpack and drops to the ground without her noticing. Maya Lee, you whisper. She looks up. Huh? You take the pouch and hand it to her. This is for you too. She holds out her hand, carefully accepting it, and as she feels for what's inside, her eyes begin to twinkle. She tears open the bag and drops the wand onto her lap. Her jaw drops, and she runs her fingers along the detailed etchings. This is for me? She says. Really? You nod, pulling your wand from your pocket. See? We have different engravings. Each one is unique like a fingerprint. Yours is completely yours. She glances at you, and then at Elithor, who's smiling at her. Thank you, she says, almost too loudly as she pulls the wand close to her chest. Elithor puts a finger to his lips. Folks are sleeping. Bach and Maya Lee both nod. Now then, says Elithor. Bach, can you use a sword? That brief intermission of happiness on Bach's face instantly drops, and his shoulders tense up again. I was taught, he mutters. You can use one then? He nods. Then take this. Elithor takes out a sheathed longsword with a clear engraving of a lion's head on the pommel. I'm not saying you'll absolutely need it, but you should have something to defend yourselves, just in case. Bach glances at you apprehensively. You nod at him, trying to smile. Bach sighs, and after a moment of hesitation, he puts his hands out and grips the hilt of the blade, resting it on his lap. Elithor nods, and he reaches into a crate, pulling out the metal shield and laying flat at the bottom. Bach once again stares at it, uncertain. He glances at you and Maya Lee before accepting it as well. There is one last item left, a small satchel, which you recognize as a bag of holding. Elithor grabs it and opens the flap. From within the black, extra-dimensional void, he pulls out 4 potions full of a familiar dark red liquid. Potions of greater healing. How in the world did you get your hands on these kinds of things? You ask. By working harder than everyone else, says Elithor in a matter-of-fact tone. From the void, he also removes a wool beanie. You should take this, he says, reaching across the crate towards Maya Lee. It's a hat of disguise. You can use it to magically disguise yourself. Maya Lee tilts her head before turning to Bach. Do you want it? She asks. I at least look like an elf. Bach shakes his head. I can already do disguises. You'll probably need to disguise yourself more than she does, you say. Bach looks down at his coat, sword, and shield, and then back at the hat. He shakes his head again. I have too many things. Maya Lee nods, accepting the hat and pulling it over her ears, which poke out of the sides like cat ears. One last thing, says Elithor. He pulls a pair of goggles stylized to appear like the eyes of an owl. This lets you see farther out in the net. He offers it to Bach. Bach shakes his head again, but Elithor stares at him, keeping his hand held out. After a long moment of silence, Bach relents and takes it. He puts it on and begins peering all around him. He extends his arms out, waving them around. His eyes look ridiculously huge, and you put your hand to your mouth, stifling your laughter. Elithor closes the crate and kicks it under his desk. We need to sleep now. Y'all can get about 5 hours tonight. Maya Lee nods, falling back into bed with a plop, the hat still on her head. "Good night," she says as she turns away, the bed creaking. Bach scoots back and leans against the door. For the first time in a while, he stretches his legs out. Despite not being able to lie down, this may be the most comfortable he's been in a while. You and Elithor huddle together at the foot of the bed, leaning your heads back onto the mattress. "Good night, everyone," you say. "Good night," says Bach. Elithor waves his hands as the candlelight goes out. A moment passes, and he leans his head against your shoulder. You hear his voice in your mind. "You can sleep in a little longer. I'll help them out myself. After that, we get some breakfast and go back to New Everlawn." You nuzzle your head against his. "Thanks, Elithor." You reach your hands into your pocket, feeling the letter you wrote in the carriage. "I know I've been harsh on you, but I only said those things because I care." "I know." "You did the right thing, though. These kids, they've had it rough, haven't they?" "Yeah." "You're brave, and I love you." "I love you too." Your eyelids grow heavy. You relax your shoulders, and despite how itchy the bed feels against your cheek and how smelly Miley's feet are, the exhaustion is still overtaking you. But you have to resist. You need to stay awake. You take your brother's hand and squeeze. "I don't deserve you." "I know it's hard, and I didn't make it easy for you. But I know you're capable, and you'll find your way eventually." "I'll try." You don't have to be a hero all the time. Elithor's mental messages start to trail off. "Just be my sister." Soon, Elithor's breathing deepens to a gentle snore, and his body falls limp. You know how he is, unable to wake up to even the loudest thunderstorms. Carefully, delicately, you separate yourself from him, scooting away. You come free as you caress his head, letting it down gently on the bed. You kiss his forehead. In the darkness, Bach's eyes are open. Gradually, he starts to pull himself upright as much as he can. Maya Lee slowly rolls to the edge of the bed, dipping her feet to the floor and sliding off. The three of you share a look, then nod. Bach twists the doorknob right next to him, and it opens outward. You reach into your pockets, taking out the letter. There wasn't much to say, except how sorry you were for lying to him, and that you hoped to one day return, so you could explain why you made this decision to leave. You thanked him, and you told him not to blame himself, and that you would do your best to survive out there, for the family's sake. You weren't sure if your parents would see this letter, but you added an apology to them as well, thanking them for raising you and doing their best. You kiss the letter, and you place it on the desk, next to the candle. Maya Lee and Bach are at the door. You nod at them, and on that signal, they step outside, carrying all of the things Elithor gave them. Following behind, you tiptoe out. As you take the door handle, you stare at Elithor one last time, sleeping peacefully, his hand closed as if still holding yours. "Goodbye," you whisper, and you close the door. Bach's hand touches your shoulder, and you see him smiling at you with remorseful eyes. Maya Lee takes you by the hand, pressing her cheek against your chest. The three of you embrace one another. "I'm all right," you say. "Let's get you two home." "Okay," says Bach. The three of you move briskly to the fire escape at the end of the hallway. Bach shoves the heavy metal door. It screeches loudly for an instant, and then opens up to a rusty, narrow set of spiraling stairs. You're outside in the cold. A wolf howls in the distance. You're surrounded by glowing blue trees and grasses. This may be the closest you've ever been to the mountains. The radiating energy pulses like a subtle heartbeat. "Ready?" you say. The two nod, both trying to hide the pure excitement in their eyes. "Let's go."